We have come to the end of the questioning of Helen Steel at the undercover policing inquiry. It's the fourth day that she's been giving evidence. She will have the opportunity to come back and finish with remote evidence in September, if she wishes to do so. It's been very, very emotional. Helen requested a break, well, a couple of breaks before it was decided that we would be unable to continue with her questioning today. We just signed off with, she was taken to the fact that John Dines was rewarded with £2.5 million of public money in order to relocate to Australia from New Zealand.
Can I just jump in there?
Please. I'm joined by Norman Blair and Ziggy. Norman, do you want to speak on that?
One of the people involved in the inquiry, on kind of the inquiry side, told me it was actually like about £5 million.
Right.
And I know this figure, it seems to keep going up and up every time. And this is after he wrecked her life.
Yeah. The 2.5 million is specifically just for the relocation.
Oh, sorry.
So no, absolutely. It's worth pointing out more and more. Yeah. I mean, so it was 2.1 million, which was transferred to him in order to move house, and the cost of moving house and taking time off work to do so. But yeah, there was numerous other costs. I mean, the fact that so many members of the SDS were flying over to New Zealand and Australia.
Free holidays.
Yeah, literally, in order to help him relocate, and also to get their story straight about the deception that they were perpetuating. It has been, I mean, just in terms of what we've been covering, it has been about Helen Steele's search for who John Dines really is, who she knew as John Barker, the investigations that she did, the communications that existed between SDS officers like Bob Lambert with New Zealand police. Hadn't been put under surveillance. We saw photographs of her with her parents, her sister in New Zealand on holiday. Deeply, deeply distressing, the levels of which the intrusive nature of it all kind of got to her. When it was put to her, all that, the fact that he got such a reward, she gave a very impassioned speech, which was thankfully broadcast. We've had a number of suspensions in the broadcast today, but that thankfully was broadcast, where she talked about how he destroyed her life, sexually exploited her for 2 years, and tried to psychologically dismantle her, and the eve of the McLibel proceedings. And he was rewarded and protected for it, whilst the police did absolutely nothing to protect the women, and not just her, but the others who were abused by the SDS. We started off just as we went to break. We started off talking about the connection she made with Rosa in 2000 when they met up by chance, and she expressed her concerns about Jim Boyling, and which really led to the beginning of the process that led to the unmasking of these units. As I say, I'm joined by Norman and Ziggy. How did you find the evidence? What did you make of it?
I mean, it was, heartbreaking and incredibly emotional when you really think about the kind of impact on her life. And I was really impressed. I'm always impressed with her, but I was really impressed with her clarity that she kept kind of coming back to that. So, I mean, the kind of, the extent to which the New Zealand police, the UK police, the money that was spent on it, the public funds, but what Helen was very able to articulate was the way that they had to fabricate her as a threat in order to be able to justify that. But their actual reason was just protecting the SDS itself and embarrassment to Dines himself, his wife finding out. That was the motivation from their perspective. But of course, then they have to make this entire fabrication, including fabricating that she was a key member of the ALF, fabricating that she was threat. So they're following her around. They're taking photographs of her family house. They're going through her luggage without her knowing, photographing. Like, the extent of the surveillance is absolutely mind-boggling, some of which we've just sort of found out about, really. And so they do. So in order to justify all that, they have to say that, that she's this threat and that it's so dangerous for Dines and others, whereas actually it's embarrassment. But the other point that she emphasized was that they did know about the sexual relationships, and we have evidence of that. So they did know that she was actually looking out of compassion, worry, and she kept saying this thing about to make sense of what happened in her life. And I found that so sort of central, that this was her life she was trying to investigate, So they know that. But in order to justify the funds and this kind of absolutely kind of paranoid, really kind of hectic state they get themselves into with this out of hand surveillance, at getting the airport police to look through their staff, just some of the details of it were mind boggling, to be honest. Yeah, and then kind of justifying all that by making her out to be some sort of dangerous terrorist. So just the whole story is just, yeah. I'll just stop for a second there.
I'd like to say something that the barrister of the inquiry said at the end, and she said it was incomprehensible. And basically, you've got John Dines being rewarded with like several £1 million of public funds for being abuser. I knew John Dines. I remember he once violently assaulted someone straight out of nothing in front of me. I know him as an agent provocateur. I know from what happened with Helen, this level of psychological and sexual abuse that he inflicted on her, in her words, destroying her life. And yet he's rewarded with all this money because the priority is about the police protecting the police.
Yeah.
And it's not about owning up to mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're all human. But it's about protecting themselves and ensuring that the case doesn't get out. Ensuring, as Helen was saying earlier, that say if with the McLibel case, there was a possibility, if it had been known at the time that Dines and Lambert were undercover police officers, that they could have been called as witnesses plus the Met Commissioner. Which obviously would be unacceptable for the police.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were taken through like numerous documents, just this whole point about them knowing. We've heard so many of the officers who were involved in Operation Muscat, which was the police response to her searching for Dines, claiming that they had no idea that there had been a sexual relationship. Given the fact that these are detectives, I think which
elite, Tom. These are. I want to be really clear. These are not grunt officers. One of the SDS officers became head of special branch. These are elite detectives. Yet for so-called elite detectives, they seem to be remarkably stupid at times.
Yeah, there's just the idea. I mean, we've seen in the paperwork where there's references to an extremely close friendship and sort of euphemisms only. Really, like the
extremely close friend. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. But there was one document, an attendance note about a meeting between HN53, the commander of Special Branch, Janet Williams, and a Met Police lawyer, where the Met Police lawyer asks, kind of going, well, was there a sexual relationship then? To which HN53 goes, yes, but John Dines remained objective throughout. And Janet Williams went, yes, it wasn't disapproved of back then, though it would be now. Which, I think, really kind of, it just showed that they would simply just keep trying to keep that out of the paper trail for as much as they could. And it's only this brief glimpse that we get where it's not just that they knew, but everybody knew. They were fully aware. The idea that they would go into such lengths. I mean, the cost of Operation Muscat, we'd say like 5 million to Dines alone. God knows how much else. Which absolutely dwarfs the budget of the SDS in general. The idea that at some point somebody wouldn't have gone, well, do you think maybe they were sleeping together? It's just an absolutely, it's ridiculous. And the fact that they've attempted to maintain this fiction throughout the process of the public inquiry really shows that the lack of respect that the undercover officers have for this process, the lack of respect they have for the law, really, they are spitting in the eye of the chair, quite frankly, by maintaining this fiction. And I think that was made very, very clear by the documents we were taking through today and the references to the transcripts when they've spoken about it. I think the level to which, we talk a lot about how forensic Helen was in terms of tracking down Dines. But taking a step back, she was going she was going over to New Zealand for months at a time, but her sister lived there. She had friends living there. She was going on holiday there.
She needed a break after McLibel.
Right. Do you know what I mean? She was preoccupied with McLibel for the most part. The size of the police response is actually not really it's not proportional.
Totally and utterly out of proportion. And then there was some kind of funny bits where they had claimed that she'd been to New Zealand when she was actually appearing at the McLibel trial day after day. So that wasn't that hard to realise that she wasn't there. One bit did make me laugh when they kind of when you look at the whole kind of Muscat thing and everything they were trying to do to make sure she didn't find out. And I was thinking to myself, well, they had no idea what was coming down the line in terms of the public inquiry. Mate, you don't even, you don't even know how exposed you're going to be.
In your worst dreams, the nightmares that Lambert and Dines, that this is happening now.
But I think the other thing that came out a bit, which is a sort of thread that we've picked up on, is the McLibel thing as well that came out. And there was some more documents today about them kind of under the auspices of kind of like how dangerous Helen is and everything, but then going to the some of the other libel actions, following people, following a film crew, with just sort of made up kind of reasons for doing that. But I think that whole thing about the collusion between the police and and McDonald's and what was actually going on there was little kind of hints of it again today, which we've seen that kind of trail throughout Helen's evidence, but more kind of suspicions shed on that a bit today.
Yeah, I think this is a huge thread. I mean, again, it's something which the police have consistently denied, that there was any sort of collusion with McDonald's. But I mean, we can just see from the levels to which just the very fact that John Dines wasn't named as the writ. And when it was obviously like a key person in the campaign.
Remember, the leaflet was partially written by Bob Lambert, and I'm sure you've mentioned this before, Tom. But it's to being clear, Bob Lambert planted an incendiary device in Debenhams in Harrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And
got promoted. That's his route to promotion.
Yeah, I mean, he based his career on it largely, though he had a very, very patchy memory of the detail around it when he appeared.
I can't remember. I'm not sure if I can recall.
I mean, just again, and another time where just the police witnesses at this process have just shown a complete lack of respect for the entirety of it. But we saw in terms of like the motivation of the police. I mean, that came very clear. It was about the reputational damage.
It's like a Pozzi scheme or something like that. It's just like the whole thing is to keep themselves, and we've seen that throughout the inquiry, that them having to sort of pretend that groups are more violent than they actually are, and now this whole suppression of kind of Helen's every aspect of her life, including her parents, her sister, everything. All just the whole thing is just to protect itself. It's this weird kind of castle made of sand. The whole SDS thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly we can see the fear from Lambert in his own file notes of like, well, there is a danger that should anything be exposed, then previous convictions of ALF activists might be found to be unsafe. And he's talking about Debenhams. He's talking about getting Andrew Clark and Jeff Shepherd put in prison because of his own actions, and that being exposed because Helen knew about his role.
That's what he based his career on, as he said.
No, I mean it's so fucking dirty, isn't it? I mean the whole thing is so just like the levels to which they were going. I mean, like when you consider the amount of effort. I mean, we've heard from numerous of the senior managers in recent times that it wouldn't have been feasible to put any sort of surveillance on the undercover officers whilst they're in the field, because that would be too intrusive to check their phone use or whatever to see if they were having sexual relationships. Yeah, the level to which they were willing to be intrusive into Helen's life when she was trying to search for Dines.
Her family's life.
Yeah, and her family's life, and those around.
Who would not? Parents.
I mean, we saw that map of the phone map of the calls that she'd made and the who she was calling and who they were calling, which meant like this is a huge level of. I mean, people might not realize today with modern tech in terms of phones, but back then, in order to get the authorization to get that level of information, we don't have the authorization documents, which is very telling because we have seen authorization documents for Rosa and Alison in the past when they were searching for the undercover officers who deceived them, and in order to get the authorizations, the claims that had to be made in those documents were incredibly wild of violence and all sorts of things, threats to life, which must have been done in this case, and must have been done not just for Helen, but for her father, for her friends, all sorts of people. That map of the phone map is enormous and has so many nodes on it. It just shows this huge police operation that was underway simply to keep the unit secret,
to protect themselves.
I just kind of, I suppose I just got an urge to really say like how impactful that was to sit there listening to the effect on her life, the emotional effect, like the sort of political stuff is so important to understand, obviously, but just wanted to get into this video. Like there was a little bit where she was describing the kind of inconsistency and the effect, like the amount that he was protected versus her. And she sort of talked a little bit about the effect on her life, about trust and relationships and how it's kind of affected her life going forward. And when you really pause for a moment and listen to her, and I would urge people to, to go back onto the YouTube and watch it, because it's really hard to kind of get your head around that, the scale to which they were prepared to destroy a woman's life
right from the get-go, you know, the relationship itself, and then everything after that, you know, including lying in this public inquiry, really, that they still haven't done it. And yeah, just that, really, just that the state can do that, and the kind of the impact on her emotions, her psyche, the bit where she's talking about how Diane's really, the exit strategy was really a sort of deliberate process of psychological manipulation to try and sort of undermine her sense of self. And it's really heartbreaking to sit and listen to that.
Exactly. And I think, you know, Helen said the exit strategy she really feels was designed to psychologically destroy her. Heartbreaking, harrowing, you know, incredible bravery to go through this process. This process has been going on for a long time. And it just shows the lengths that the police are prepared to go to protect themselves and not to take responsibility, you know, as Tom was saying, to work hand in hand with corporations. It's all about protecting themselves. It's about protecting the system. And we've got to push back against that, which is what, and personally, I think this inquiry has been enormously successful at the same time of being, like, as you said, heartbreaking, harrowing, but to get this information out into the public so we can realize what the police will do and what they have done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that's, I mean, it is so distressing to see. I mean, we know Helen, you know, it's so distressing to see her, you know, go through this process and going to get this out. But it does have a huge value in terms of, you know, like exposing the reality of British policing and the policing of protest and the way in which people are criminalized for, you know, wanting to make the world a better place at the end of the day. I mean, that's literally what it's all about. But I mean, it is incredibly telling when we talk, when Helen was talked about the ways in which John Dines destroyed her life. These, you know, John Dines disappeared from her life 35 years ago. But the impact that he made and continued to make, like, resonates right until today. And that's not just the case for Helen. I think that's the case for so many people whose lives were affected by undercover police, because the psychological manipulation and violence, really, that was done by these officers, you know, resonates down the rest of people's lives. It really affects the ability of people to trust their own judgment, to make connections with others, to have other future relationships. And it is so profound. And I think perhaps, though we talk about it a lot on these videos, and people who follow this hearing can be aware of us talking about it. I think Helen today really kind of illustrated really how deep and how hard it is on people. And I think that's really important.
And she was very kind of articulate about that, about kept coming back when they were talking about things that Dines had, you know, or the whole sort of, I got distracted, the whole sort of Muscat operation and how he was protected. And she kept coming back to that, my abuser, the man who abused me. This was what the man who abused me was being treated like. And that kind of clarity of just always bringing us back to that was useful, I think.
You got a new house out of it.
Yeah.
Holidays, paid holidays, lack of earnings, because he had to go on holiday with his friends because she was so dangerous. So he was feared for everybody. So they had to go on a 3-week beach holiday, and he got compensation for lack of earnings.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so obscene. It is frustrating that Helen was not able to finish her evidence. I mean, it's been very frustrating the way that she's had to give evidence.
Understandable, Tom.
Oh, totally,
you know,
totally.
This is like heavy duty stuff, man.
Yes, absolutely. But I think what I think the frustrating part is that she's had to give this evidence in a piecemeal fashion. This is the 4th day that she's appeared to give evidence. She's also given the evidence enclosed a number of times. In some cases, those have been sessions of like an hour at a time. It would have been so much better if the inquiry had found the ability to set aside a week and go through things in one sitting. And it would be equally distressing. Of course it would have been. But we now have the situation where she's going to have to come back in September and give evidence remotely. I'm sure she will take that opportunity because there's so much more to be said. And I think that what we were just getting on was the connection that was built between the women who were deceived and comparing notes and starting to, and this was the beginning really of the story of exposing the undercover officers, which took a long time, but really sort of created where we are today. So, I mean, that will be worth paying attention to. It will be in September. I'm guessing that we'll be hearing from HN86 between the 21st and 23rd of September. I'm imagining it was around there. I get the impression, I don't know, there's no reason for me to know that when the closed hearings will be, but as I would imagine that they're going to be around that same time. We have no idea how many closed hearings there are. There may be many more than there are open hearings. Certainly, there are a tremendously large number of officers who are being heard in closed, some of which we know about, like HN91, who deceived a woman into a sexual relationship. We know very little detail about it, but we are allowed to know that. A huge number of the other officers, we don't even get to know their nominals. These are the ones who are working in other areas which are closed from the inquiry for political reasons, which is very frustrating. But she will be back. There is more to hear from Helen, and I recommend that people can do that. The hearing today doesn't finish. We have another hearing this afternoon with Richard Walton, who was giving evidence yesterday.
The slimy cop.
Yes, the slimy, many things. This is the officer from the This is the officer from the Stephen Lawrence review team who met with HN81, who was infiltrating the Stephen Lawrence support group at the time, which should be interesting. So I recommend people stick around for that. We have had, thank you to everybody who's liked and shared and commented, and we have had some comments. Just to go through them. We'll hear from Jack Shepherd. The thing is mind-boggling, even in the clusterfuck that is the world, the whole Spike Up scandal. It really is, and I think that I think Helen's story is one of the. I mean, partially because she kept the receipts. Yeah. I mean, like literally in many cases, but she has so much. About the appendix to her evidence is enormous. She did so much.
Things, the mind-boggling things like these cars sitting outside her family's house. Videoing like her family member's garden in New Zealand for hours and hours on end in case she walked out. And there was like one bit they were like, she seems mostly to have been going shopping with her relative. It's like, that's just like just being slightly, but
go shopping.
Oh wow. Yeah. So that's what they're spending money on, is watching Helen and her sister go like down to the local shops to buy some
and of course this
stuff for lunch.
This was the New Zealand police who had been led to believe that she was an incredibly dangerous, violent ILF activist who presented a real and present danger to John Dines, which I mean, you do have to question what how foolish they were to actually believe that, but that was the message that was being sent to them by the Met Police. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm good, but this is I'm in such admiration of Helen, and I think we can all learn so many lessons from this, and we just keep pressing on.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean that is Helen's message, right? Is you keep pressing on and you keep finding the connections with other people and like the bigger injustices. I think one of the things about the way that Helen has approached this whole topic, as much as it's been her and her life, she has centered everybody else at the same time, and she was so distressed at the end because she wanted to talk about Rosa and what happened to Rosa and the fight that Rosa had in terms of her abuser with Jim Boyling, which is testament to the woman in general. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again this afternoon with reaction to Richard Walton's evidence, which started yesterday. I don't know how long that'll go on for. I can't imagine it being that long, but there will be more today. But yeah, it's been a very long week and a very long day already. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.